Hey, it's Jess. Welcome back. Today I'm here with another Way Back Wednesday where I will be talking about all the books that I read in June of 2021. Looking at my Goodreads, I read a total of 7 books that month. All of them were new, none of them were rereads. The first book I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I had been hearing a lot about this book on YouTube, and I can't remember if I saw it at the library or if I had specifically put it on hold, but I remember that I picked it up from my library. It wasn't the type of book that I typically read. Back then I was reading a lot of fantasy, a lot of horror. That hasn't changed, but again, I'd heard so much about this one, I wanted to check it out. And I am so glad I did. I ended up loving this book. I know my friend didn't really like the end of it, but I couldn't get enough. I read this book so quickly. So in this book, we are following Addie, and she is in an arranged marriage and does not want to marry this man. So she goes into the woods and prays to get out of the marriage. Her family always told her, only pray during the day, never go in the woods and pray after sundown because you never know who is listening. Well, Addie wasn't paying attention and did pray after sunset, and someone dark and mysterious came to answer her prayers. He made a deal with Addie that she would live forever and be young, but she would never be remembered. This means that she can meet new people, but as soon as they leave the room, they're going to forget her. So, like, if we were in a room, and I would introduce myself, you would leave, come back, you would have no idea who I was. This happens a really long time ago in, like, I don't know, the 1800s, a long time ago. Then you pick up in modern times. Addie has been living with this curse for many, many years and learned how to deal. And then one day she goes into a bookshop and meets a boy who does remember her. And so she invests in this relationship, but learns that he may not be telling her everything and may have a dark secret of his own. Again, this isn't the type of book that I normally read, but for some reason I just couldn't get enough. I really, really liked it. I liked the character development. My friend did not like the development of, like, the dark spirit. I can't remember his name now. Basically, he's supposed to be the devil, and she just didn't like the ending. But I really enjoyed it. I haven't read anything else by V.E. Schwab. I really want to pick up some more of her books. I know she has a lot out there. I just haven't picked them up, but I highly recommend The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I kind of want to read it again soon. The next book I read was One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. This is the sequel to the book One of Us is Lying, which I read back in April of 2021. In this book, you are picking back up at Bayview High School a year after the events of the first book. This time you are following new characters. One of them is Maeve, who is Bronwyn's sister. Bronwyn was in the first book. And a new scandal has rocked the school. There is a new app that is a truth or dare game where someone is called out and dared to do something, usually something illegal. Most of the time they get more dangerous as you go on. If they do not complete that dare within a certain amount of time, I think it's 24 hours, then the whole school, and therefore the rest of the community, will know a dark secret about that person. Maeve and her friends are trying to figure out who is behind the truth or dare game and how they're finding out these dark secrets about high schoolers and trying to keep the community, together after the events that happened in the first book. I really liked this book. I didn't like it as much as One of Us is Lying, but it was nice to be back in this world, back with these characters. The character from the first book made an appearance in this second book. They still are pretty prevalent in there, and I did like that. This did end up being a trilogy. I believe it's only a trilogy. I don't think she's coming out with another one. The last book is called One of Us is Back, and I read that last fall. Again, I liked that, but I think the first one is still my favorite. The next book I read was Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This is the second Joe Hill book that I had read, and I just don't think his writing is for me. I enjoyed this one, but it kind of took me a while to get into, and I don't know if I love it as much as a lot of other people like this book. In this book, you are following Victoria, who has a hidden talent for finding things that are lost, no matter where they are. With her mind and her bike, she can find things anywhere. One day, she accidentally finds Charlie Manx and his car in a place called Christmasland. Charlie Manx turns out to be a not so nice guy. And although she does escape him, he does not forget about her. And so the last part of this book, you are following Victoria as an adult. Charlie Manx has returned. She is trying to defeat him, basically. Again, I liked this one, but it wasn't my favorite. It took me a while to get through. Part of that could have been because when I had it, I had family visiting, and so I couldn't read as much as I normally would, like for as long as I would during the day, but I don't know, it's not my favorite. I think I highly prefer Stephen King to Joe Hill. Stephen King is his father, and I've just found so many more hits and likes with Stephen King than I have with Joe Hill. I do have one more of his books on my want to read list, so I'll give him another chance, but I don't know. I don't know if he's the author for me. The next book I read was The Troop by Nick Cutter. I had been hearing about this book all over YouTube. Gabby Reads on YouTube loved this book so much she named her book club after it, and I saw it at the library and knew that I had to check it out. In this book, you are following a group of Boy Scouts who are on their annual camp out. They go to an island. One night, a man mysteriously appears, and he looks very sick, emaciated. He doesn't look like he's going to last long. And the troop leader, for some reason, tries to help him and brings him inside their cabin, and things kind of go from there. This book, it's written, I really like it because it's written in you have the chapters, but between chapters are news articles, and so it's kind of like multimedia. There's news articles. I think there's probably, there's interviews, podcasts, stuff like that between some of the chapters. So you kind of get an idea this is a story being told. And I like when books do that. I think it's very cool. I will say there are huge trigger warnings in this book. There is a lot of body horror. There is at least 2 scenes of pretty horrific animal abuse. So if that's something that triggers you, please steer clear. I kind of just skimmed over those parts so I didn't have to read them in depth because it's not something that I'm really that comfortable with. But the body horror was superb, super gross. There is one scene with a kid in a basement that haunts me. I still think about that scene and blah. So if you're into body horror, I recommend checking it out. It's very gross. A lot of people think that it's a very gross book. I read books like that all the time, so I wasn't affected by it. If you're looking for a good summer read because it takes place during a camping trip and you're not afraid for body horror, then I suggest you check this one out. The next book I read was Circe by Madeline Miller. This is another book that I had heard a lot about but hadn't picked up. Again, not really the type of book that I read, but I decided to check it out because I'd heard so much about it. This is a retelling of the Greek myth of Circe, who is a sorceress. I don't know very much about her. I love Greek mythology, but Circe's not one that I know much about. I know she's a sorceress. I know she has an island and turns men into pigs. But that's all I knew about her. I didn't really know what to expect going into this book. You are following Circe. She is alone on an island, and basically she has visitors to the island. It's kind of about her, I don't know, it's about her living her life and falling in love with men who come to her island. I don't really remember a lot about it. I remember that I liked it. Again, for a book that is not the typical genre that I read, I did enjoy this one. I read it really quickly. I wanted to know what was going to happen. And I always like a good retelling, especially of Greek mythology. I do love Greek mythology. I know Madeline Miller has another very popular book called The Song of Achilles. I haven't read that one. I think she has a few other ones too. I haven't read anything else by her, but I'd be willing to check them out because I did like Circe. I just somehow haven't found time to put them on my reading list yet. The next book I read was The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I had been hearing a lot about this book, so I saw it at my library and decided to pick it up. As with most of the books that I read, I see them and like, hey, I've heard of that. Let's check it out. In this book, you are following Eric and Andrew and their adopted daughter, Wen. They have gone on a vacation to a remote cabin. One day, Wen is playing outside, catching grasshoppers, and a man approaches her. That man is joined by others, and the group go to Eric and Andrew and tell them they can stop the end of the world. All they have to do is choose to kill one of the people in their family. They get to pick which one dies, but they have to do that in order to stop the end of the world. The intruders go through and say why they think this. They're telling them, stories foretelling the end of the world and appealing to them, saying, please make this choice. We don't want the world to end. This book has been made into a movie called Knock at the Cabin. It came out maybe 2 years ago, maybe just a year ago. I can't remember. I liked the movie. The book and the movie have different endings. The book is completely open, ambiguous. You kind of get to decide how you want to interpret that. A lot of people don't like that. I feel like the movie had a more concrete ending, and then some people didn't like that. So it's kind of up to you. If you are a person who doesn't mind having an open ending, you kind of get to interpret it the way that you want. I would recommend checking this out. If nothing else, you could watch the movie. I thought it was really well done. I loved the cast of it. And it was a good adaptation. But this book, I don't know, it's very strange. It really makes you think. And I think I would have different thoughts and feelings about it if I read it again. I just haven't picked it up again. The last book I read in June was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. In this book, you are following Anne, who is an agoraphobic woman who is also an alcoholic. So she stays in her house and she drinks a lot. One night she is looking out the window and across the street she believes she sees a murder happen. So she is trying to figure out if it really happened, trying to talk to the police about it, but the police don't necessarily believe her. This is very much an unreliable narrator book. Anne had some trauma in her past, and that's one reason she is an alcoholic now. This is very much, it reminds me, as I'm sure everyone else, it's very much like Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. It's not anything new that you haven't seen before. I saw the movie of this before I read the book, and I think that I didn't enjoy the book as much because of that. I liked the movie. It wasn't because I already knew the twist in the ending. That's not why I didn't enjoy the book as much. I don't know. There was just something about it. I think because it could go so in depth with the characters, maybe I didn't feel like it needed to go so in depth. I don't really remember. I don't know. I just remember that I liked the movie a lot better than I liked the book. My friend read the book first and loved it, so she was super excited when the movie came out. And I don't know which one she likes better, but I think if you've seen the movie, you could probably pass on the book, unless you're like me and just you want to read books even though they've been made into movies and you've already seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie and you're interested in it, I would recommend reading the book before you watch the movie. Those are all the books that I read in June of 2021. I had a pretty good reading month. Again, at the time, 7 books, pretty admirable considering I had vacation, I had family visiting. I liked most of the books that I read, and there's a couple that I'd like to go back and reread. But now I want to know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.